Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for the Shift Wellness and Resiliency Effective Leadership Series, Self-Compassion for Leaders. I'm Eileen Lafergie with OJJDP's NTAC, and I'm going to do a few introduction slides. Please note that we are recording this webinar, and it will be posted on OJJDP's YouTube and multimedia page. Closed captioning is available in the multimedia panel. If you're having audio issues, you can use the Call Me feature in WebEx. If you have any technical problems, you can send a message to either me or Trevor. All questions will be addressed during the Q&A session after the presentation. A certificate of attendance and a copy of the slides will be sent out after the presentation. So help us count. If you're viewing by yourself, no need to type anything. But if you're viewing as a group, please go to the chat and type in how many people are joining you today. So here's our agenda for the day. I am going to pass it over to Basilia, and she will take it from here.
Thanks so much, Eileen. Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Basilia Padilla. I am the program coordinator for the SHIFT program here at the Innocent Justice Foundation, and I'm also going to be your moderator for today. Today, we're going to be discussing part 2 of our leadership series, where we're going to be discussing self-compassion for leaders. Our organization is funded by OJJDP, and we were founded back in 2007 to support ICAC teams and their affiliates. And it was through this relationship that we understood the heavy burden that a lot of these individuals face when dealing with the hard work that they have to do, and which is why we developed the SHIP program to help normalize asking for help and mitigate the stress and trauma that they may be enduring in their work. We did get quite a few questions. I'm going to go off camera and on mute in just a second. I'm going to try and address as many as we can in our Q&A session towards the end. If you have any additional questions, feel free to insert those in the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our wonderful trainers, Carol and Dave.
Thank you, Basilia. My name is Dave Ferteri. I have been in law enforcement for 26 years now. As you can see from my bio, I spent my first half of my career as a special agent with the Attorney General's office in Pennsylvania. I'm currently spending the second part of the career working for the county prosecutor's office in Cuyahoga County in Cleveland, Ohio, where I serve as the statewide commander for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force program. And it's a program that I've been a part of for about the last 17 years of my law enforcement career. It goes without saying that it's been one of the most satisfying and rewarding endeavors of that career, but not without its hurdles and struggles, especially related to the material that we are viewing, the offenders that we deal with on a daily basis, and then as a supervisor, trying to manage all of those investigations as well as the folks that work underneath of me, but then also the folks that I report to. And so, for all the success that we've had as a task force, one of the areas where we struggled was with regards to mental health and wellness. And it was after becoming commander in 2014 that I met the folks at the Innocent Justice Foundation and just learned how important it is to, have a program in place, how to take care of yourself personally, and then also how to be an effective leader and take care of others. So we've come a long way in the last 8 or 10 years with regards to mental health and wellness. I'm going to talk today about some of our struggles, but also ways that we've improved morale and our team concepts and just all that has made us more of an effective group, both personally and as a team. So thrilled to be here today. Carol?
Hi, thanks, Dave. My name is Carol Bruska, and as you can see from my bio, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am a trauma expert. So that just means that I've taken lots and lots of classes on trauma, and I've studied it a lot. And I work with a lot of people that are experiencing trauma. So I work with the New Mexico Attorney General's Office of Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force and the Human Trafficking Task Force, and so I work directly with the law enforcement officers. I'm not working with the victims there. So I'm working with their trauma. I'm working with some sexual assault victims. I work with some domestic violence victims, and then some women in recovery. So I do spend a lot of time working with people on trauma, which has given me the an understanding of the experiences that people have and then ways to support them. And one of the ways that I've recognized is that if there is a workforce, if you're working in an environment where the leaders understand the nature of the work you're doing and the leaders are supportive and they mentor that and they show that by making sure that they're taking steps to manage their own stress, I've seen that those kind of agencies are much more successful, and the employees in there tend to be more successful as well. So I'm hoping that we can teach you something new today and something you can walk away with. Please, like Vasilia said, we will have time at the end for questions, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those. I'm just glad to be here and looking forward to training with you today.
And we've covered a lot of topics over the last several years through the Innocent Justice Foundation. And one of the things that we always start every training out with is just this idea that we're going to smash this stigma. We're going to set aside, maybe some of the concerns that we have about talking about mental health and wellness. We're going to, kind of break down that barrier that says, especially in law enforcement, that we can't talk about how we're feeling or what we're going through, or it's taboo to ask a coworker how they're feeling, or maybe give them a hug if they need some comfort or something. So we've tried for years to break those walls down, because it's been very difficult as we started the program to get the buy-in and to ask officers to trust the process in some respects, to be more empathetic, to be more understanding, to think about not only themselves, but also their fellow coworkers, and recognize that it's okay to admit that you're not as tough as you think, and that it's okay to talk about some of the things that you're going through. So keep that open mind, not only today as we go through this webinar, but also as we, go forth from here and try to just better ourselves as individuals.
And the second piece of that is really that what we want to tell people is that we understand when Dave and I are talking, it's very clear that we are speaking from our perspective. So the way I talk about things might be different from the way Dave talks about things, the way you might witness or experience things. So each of us does have our own perspective, and I cannot know your perspective, but I can appreciate and acknowledge your perspective. So certainly, if we're saying something and you would like to share your perspective, just please put a message in the chat so we can have an understanding of what that's like. We all come from different families. We are all different people. We all have different constellations of friend life and work life and home life. So when we speak, we don't want you to think that we are saying this is the only way. We just say that this is the way we are doing things and this is the way that we view things. But please feel free to share with us what your perspective is. Now, the objectives that we're going to be covering today, we're going to talk about how to become an effective leader, because once you have the skills to do that, your job truly will be easier. It will be easier for you to be in charge of staff. It will be easier for you to answer questions asked by your leadership. Just being able to have those skills is going to be amazing. And I'm sure that you already have plenty of them. This might be a reminder or just some new tools you can add. Discuss the importance of wellness for success while in the leadership role. And so what does that look like? Learn about the importance of self-compassion for success. We have to be able to have compassion for ourselves. We have to be able to recognize that we deserve to be treated well. We have worked hard, and consequently, self-compassion is something we should feel very confident about. So just being able to have that kindness for yourself will be huge. And then lastly, understand the steps needed to create an effective and resilient team.
And one of the first questions that we received for this webinar, as I was looking through them earlier, what makes an effective leader? I mean, that can be a difficult question to answer. If you've spent any time in a bookstore or the airport, there's no shortage of self-help, management, leadership books on what makes an effective leader or what people think makes an effective leader. And I've read a lot of them. I've read more than I care to admit, and I still would say there are days where I'm not as effective as I'd like to be. But I think a lot of it comes down to just compassion, and some of these basic principles that you see outlined here. Leadership is not that difficult, but it does require us to, not only think about ourselves, but think about others. And in a lot of cases, that's being respectful. It's taking the time to care, not just about what the job or the mission is, but what people are going through. Years ago, I had a coworker come to me and she said, we were having a somewhat heated discussion, and she said, no one is afraid of you. And I thought about that for a long time, and then realized that, she meant it as somewhat of an insult, and I took it more as a compliment, because I don't want people to be, afraid of me. I don't want to be that guy that, no one is comfortable talking to, or that they don't think I understand what they're going through. I want to be on the same level with people. I want to have empathy for what they're going through. I want to understand. I may not know everything about their personal lives, but I want to, take some time to get to know them as people. Because at the end of the day, all the things that you see here, helping others, benefiting others, having actions that we're going to commit to and say that if we're going to do something, that we're actually going to do it. That's what keeps people in the seats. That's what keeps people engaged with the mission and the goals of what we're trying to do here. And so I think really when it boils down to it, it's some simple aspects of leadership, a lot of which relate to just us as human beings and our ability to, connect with our fellow coworkers.
And so what is self-compassion and what does it require? Well, self-compassion really is treating ourselves as if we are our own best friend. If I'm going to have self-compassion, I have to be able to say, I'm not going to hold myself to a standard that's higher than everybody else because I should be able to do this. I'm holding myself to the standard that I would my friends and family, and then allowing myself to sometimes make a mistake or sometimes not have all the answers or sometimes just not showing up in the way that I really would like to 100% of the time. So it requires ongoing awareness of our own pain and suffering. In order to be self-compassionate, we have to understand what we are feeling and how we're feeling it, and then thinking about what is our pain and suffering and what are we doing about that? Is that pain and suffering coming out of our own self-critical attitude? Is it coming out of somebody else maybe hurting our feelings? What's going on that we have that pain and suffering? And then self-compassion also requires empathy as opposed to judgment towards oneself in the face of the pain and suffering. So we probably know people that are judgmental, right? And maybe we don't know quite as many who are empathic. But being empathic really requires us to then be able to put ourselves in that person, in someone else's shoes, put someone else in our shoes, and say, this is what I deserve to be. This is how I deserve to be treated. It requires a sense of belonging to be a greater whole of all humanity. So recognizing as another piece of that we are a part of the system. We are not the whole system. And the system will be able to function whether we leave today or next week or next year. It will bring somebody new in, and although we have special sets of skills, somebody else will take the reins. So making sure that we have the ability to care for ourselves and love for ourselves and be able to support ourselves in the way that we would like, and maybe it's the way that we wish somebody else would support us, but they're not there for us. That's what self-compassion is all about. So self-compassion and self-care. My belief is that you cannot have self-care without self-compassion. So if we don't feel that we deserve to be treated well because we're not thinking about ourselves in that way, we're not going to be the ones that are going to be doing things for ourselves. I talk to people all the time and they say, I really want to focus on self-care, but I'm too busy. Or I really want to focus on self-care, but there's too many other people that need me. And all of those things make me wonder, are you having any self-compassion for yourself beforehand, or are you skipping past the self-compassion and then acting like self-care is a luxury or self-care is something that is not a necessity, and so you don't put the time or effort into it? In my mind, when we think of self-compassion and self-care, it's self-compassion is the way that we think about ourselves. It's the way we regard ourselves. So do we regard ourselves with love? Do we regard ourselves with kindness and gentleness, or do we regard ourselves with harshness? And then once we do regard ourselves with love and compassion, then we have the ability to say, and in order to keep this compassion going, I need to do X, Y, Z for myself so that I can continue to feel good. So I hope it makes sense that if we don't have self-compassion, it's really hard to have self-care, only because we won't take that time. We'll feel guilty that we're taking the time. We'll feel like the birds can go find water somewhere else. All of the other excuses that we make up because we don't feel like we deserve the self-care. Those are the myths that we want to break so that you can be present for yourself and you can use that self-care.
Yeah, and we unfortunately see this too often, especially in the ICAC world. And it's easy to sit here as a supervisor and see it from that 1,000-foot view. But 10 years ago, I was working these cases. I was more in the trenches, invested day to day, and I was, on the other side of it, where I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't have that self-compassion. I was so focused on this idea that there were children out there who were being victimized if I wasn't online in an undercover capacity, or if I wasn't working case after case. We see it with our forensic examiners who will say to me from time to time, I have a case with 500,000 images and videos of potential exploitation material, and I need to get through, 100,000 of those before the end of the day. And I will say, well, that's honorable, but if you don't go home and take some time for yourself, if you don't take some time for your family, you're going to end up regretting it. And the reality is that work's going to be there tomorrow. Even if you get through all of those images and videos today, I'm going to assign you another case tomorrow, and a case after that, and a case after that. And so it really requires us to then say, okay, what is important? Obviously the work that we're doing is important. The work that all of you are doing is important. But is it more important than your family? Is it more important than your self-care? And the answer that I've learned over the last 26 years is no, it's not. Because obviously we want to, grow as individuals. We want to take care of ourselves. But we obviously have a goal at the end of life. There's something that you're working for. There's something that you're tirelessly getting up every day for little pay and very little notoriety. And I suspect that has nothing to do with career or work at the end of it all. So, we talk a lot about self-care, more so than self-compassion, but Carol's right. If we don't think about the self-compassion piece of it, it's going to be that much more difficult for us to, bring in that self-care piece and start to do some things that will make ourselves better. So with that, a question for you, and we'd ask that you just, maybe put some of your answers in the chat there. What are some of the ways you treat yourself compassionately? Hopefully you have the chat box there. You can just put your answers in there, just list them out and give us an opportunity to discuss some of those. Okay, some flexibility in your arrival or your ability to leave a little later. Meditation, that's good.
Yep. Time off or leaving early to spend time with family. And all of those are great activities to do to teach yourself to travel. Great. Yeah, all of those things are wonderful. Time in nature, one of my favorites. Taking time off work without scheduling personal appointments. Oh, that's good. Take a day off. Hiking, turning off the work phone. Wonderful. That takes a lot of effort. Thank you for those answers.
And even if you're not turning the phone off, maybe just turning off the notifications. You know, it's amazing the difference that, you know, not hearing the ding or not hearing the vibrate, you know, allowing yourself to be immersed in what you're doing. And then later on, you know, once or twice a day, checking your phone, not always being tied down to those sounds that we hear that forces us a lot of times to just grab our phone without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I like too the idea that we're going to spend time with coworkers and not discuss work. Um, you know, we have tried a lot more to uh, not always work the full 8 hours throughout the day. And I know that sounds counter to what, you know, we've learned as folks who are going into the professional careers is you go to work and you work, right? Um, but why can't we spend time talking about other things outside of work when we're at work? You know, not just, I'm not talking about just breaks or, you know, time during lunch, but, you know, you go in and you talk to somebody about a case, spend a little bit of time talking about, you know, personal things. Hopefully you're connected to your coworkers on social media. You see what they're going through, you see what they're doing. Um, you know, it does wonders when our folks are involved, not just in the professional lives of their coworkers, but also the personal lives. And I think that leads itself to this, again, this idea of self-compassion. You know, I embody a wellness environment, the idea that people are going to be more resilient. So, you know, I have to be aware of that in my own self to be able to push that forward and project that to the folks that are here. You know, it requires me to be attuned to, you know, not only what I'm going through, but also what everyone else is going through. You know, I'll walk around the office, I'll take the temperature of the office per se, in the sense that, you know, I can tell when someone's not their best self. I can tell when something is bothering somebody else. And I want to talk to people about that because I want them to feel comfortable also coming to me when they recognize something's not right with myself, or when they have something that they want to talk about, when their, you know, self-compassion kicks in, or they realize they need some self-care of their own. And I saw this in action a few years ago after our program went into play. I started to see coworkers who would come to me as a supervisor and ask how I was doing. You know, where it wasn't just me walking around saying, how are you and how are you and what's wrong? It was people coming up to me finally and saying, hey, how are you doing? You know, no one asks the supervisor oftentimes, you know, what they're going through or if things are okay with them. And so it was kind of a light bulb moment to see that start to play out, where people were realizing, you know, they were being compassionate and they were starting to show empathy and realize that regardless of title, we're all in the same boat.
And there's a comment here, Dave, about starting a lighthearted prank war, like googly eyes around someone's office, hiding 100 little ducks, filling an office with balloons. That's great because it's very lighthearted, and it's a way to really engage with your coworkers in a goofy way. And then someone else was talking about making celebrating people's birthdays. So all of those things are really wonderful ways to connect with others, and it's a wonderful way to get your mind off of work for a little bit because you need that. You need those little, I mean, that in and of itself is self-care.
Carol, I don't know the person that made that comment, but someone filled my office with balloons several years ago, and I will say it was a little shocking at first. I would just caution everyone, if you're going to do that, please don't put glitter in those balloons, because the balloons need to be popped at some point. And I will say that the glitter causes some problems when it comes to computers and computer hardware. So balloons, yes, glitter, no. So thank you for that.
Thanks for the update. So why is self-compassion important? As an ICAC leader, Dave, why do you think self-compassion is important for leadership?
Well, I think, it puts forward what we want to see in our people. I want to model, I want the folks that work for me or that work with me to model themselves and be their best selves. And I think when they realize that, that I'm compassionate, that I'm empathetic, I get that back. Not only I get that back, but everyone else gets that back, tenfold.
Absolutely. Great. Okay, so we have a quote here on compassion. With self-compassion, we give ourselves the same kindness and care we give to a good friend. There's a woman named Kristen Neff, and if you're interested in self-compassion, she's got a TED Talk on self-compassion. She's got some quotes on self-compassion, and some just YouTube videos where she really goes into depth about self-compassion and how it's so important. And, really it's not just about us, it's not about us feeling sorry for ourselves. It's about recognizing, that we're humans. So recognizing that when we experience something, it's not only happening to us. And I know sometimes we feel like, oh, I'm the only one that has bad luck, or I'm the only one that bad things happen to. But part of self-compassion is recognizing we are just one individual in this giant universe, and what we are experiencing, people experience all the time. And then another piece of that compassion is going to be looking at, are we connecting with others during that time, or are we isolating? Because isolation is not typically self-compassion. Certainly there might be a time period where we just need a little bit of space, but continuing to isolate is not self-compassion. So thinking about what we need, what would our best friend, what would our spouse, what would our child need if they were struggling with an issue, and then giving that to ourselves. So some myths about self-compassion. And I'm glad that we've got this in here, because these are things that I hear, particularly from people that are very driven and don't really want to give themselves some grace. So, I'm glad that we've got these. So self-compassion means weakness. Well, it doesn't really mean weakness at all. Self-compassion actually takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of work for us to be able to say, wow, I'm struggling and I need some TLC myself, right? So it's not that we're weak. It's actually that we are strong enough to recognize that we are not weak. And so self-compassion is one of the most powerful sources of coping and resilience. Giving yourself the space and time and grace is huge, and it's not something that comes easy. Many of us don't like to ask for help. Many of us don't like to admit that we are not doing everything perfectly. So self-compassion really is not about weakness, it's about strength. Self-compassion makes you complacent. So that, when I first read that myth, I thought that was an interesting thing. What is that about? And actually, self-compassion makes us more motivated. When we allow ourselves to have some grace and treat ourselves with loving kindness, then we can feel more motivated to get things done. Then we can decide, okay, I'm going to take this time out where I'm just going to love on myself for a while and give myself what I need, and then I'm going to go out there and do what I need to get done for other people. So it's not necessarily being selfish, but it's about doing what you can to not be self-complacent. And again, it's certainly not narcissistic. It's not at all narcissistic. Narcissism would be that we're thinking about others and not about anyone else. But the majority of people that I know, particularly those that are using self-compassion as a way to make themselves stronger and better for everybody else, it's not out of narcissism. It's out of self-love, and it's out of wanting to be the best we can so we can show up for everybody else. So even if we are giving ourselves love and attention and doing lots of self-care things, it doesn't mean that we are narcissistic or selfish or any of those things. It means that we recognize that we need to have certain things in place for us to be at our best. So again, it's not a selfish act at all. Being good to yourself actually helps you be good to others. So when we're feeling good about ourselves, it's easier for us to work with others. It's easier for us to give to others. It's easier for us to think about others in that way. And then self-compassion means feeling sorry for yourself. No, it doesn't. I think because it has self and it has compassion in it, people think that's what it means. But feeling sorry for myself would be like saying, nothing good ever happens to me, or I deserve a raise and I'm not getting one, or I'm never going to find that partner that I want. The whole world is against me. That is feeling sorry for yourself, but self-compassion is not that way. Self-compassion is recognizing that you're a human, that you have needs, that sometimes you're going to mess up, and that if you allow yourself to love yourself and be loved by others, that will help pull you through.
Yeah, it takes practice. I think initially, because I would agree that it was a long time coming where we tried to get over this idea of this weakness or complacency or selfishness. I mean, we would say for years self-care is selfish, and I understand why that was viewed that way. But I think if anything, it makes us more aware. I think it all makes us aware of what's going on around us. Too often we bury our heads in the sand. We focus on, our roles as supervisors or leaders. We get so bogged down with things. Someone just mentioned about, not delegating. I'm guilty of that every single day, where I have a great team, and yet there's times where I try and do things forgetting that there are people that can handle those tasks or assist with those tasks, because then it gives me more time to focus on this idea of self-compassion, or to be more aware of other people. I have said for years that I want to serve as someone who is there for the folks to be able to support them. Now, unfortunately, with our workload, there are times where I've got to work a few cases. I've got to handle a few investigative matters, help with prosecutions. But I'm at my best when I can serve in a support role. And that's the one thing I enjoy about being a supervisor, not the disciplinary aspects, not the administrative things, but this idea that I can see what is going on around me, have that 1,000-foot view and be there to be able to support and provide, that compassion and those self-care techniques and all the things that we've been talking about. I think when we look beyond this idea of self-judgment, that's when we really start to get in touch with, the important parts of ourselves that care. Because I think the bottom line, right, is that we want to be as healthy and happy as possible. We're going to talk about that right here on this next slide briefly. Because I don't think there's any problem with being tender in a sense, or using the word, we use the word love and wisdom and courage and being generous and being grateful. Again, those are all simple ideas that go a long way in terms of being compassionate and, having the ability to recognize when we need, that self-care, because all of it is very central to the mental health, this idea of good mental health. But like I said earlier, it requires practice. It requires learning. A number of you mentioned in the chat about traveling, okay? And I was never a huge proponent of vacation time. I was a guy for the longest time that said, You know, I almost looked at my time, my vacation and my sick time as a badge of honor as how much of it I had. You know, and I got to a point where my boss would say to me one day, you know, you're losing it. If you don't use it, you're losing it. You know, you're not winning any awards because you've got the most sick time and you've got the most vacation time. It took practice for me to go on vacation. And I know that sounds crazy, but when you get into this mindset that you need to be there for others, when you spend your entire career, you know, protecting children and worrying about victims and how many offenders we need to arrest, it's so easy to just think, all right, I'll take a vacation in a week. And then a week comes and we'll push that another week, or we can do that next year. I take more vacations now than probably anybody. And it's one of the best things that I ever did. And I don't apologize for it because I've earned the time. Most of you probably have, you know, if you've worked quite some time, you've got a lot of vacation time built up. So, you know what? Use it. I mean, because when I come back from vacation, I'm better than when I left. You know, because that's when I start to see all the things that, you know, have been affecting me. My wife says I'm a different person when I'm on vacation. My kids say I'm a different person when I'm on vacation. My coworkers tell me I'm a different person when I come back from vacation. So you know what? If you got the time, use it. It does take it takes some practice. You know, it takes some practice to leave it behind. Like someone said, it takes practice to put your phone down and not pay attention to it all the time. So again, you know, if the goal is to be as healthy and happy as possible, then, you know, there are ways to go about doing that.
And if I could just add, Dave, about a comment that was on the chat. There was someone saying that it's not that they didn't trust people, but they just feel like reaching out to someone is a burden. And so they don't want to put their problems or their issues on someone else to burden them. And I can tell you that that research shows that by reaching out to somebody and allowing that person to support you, it's good for you and them. When someone comes to us and says, can I tell you this, what's going on, or can I ask for your advice, or can you just sit and listen? It's good for, it actually increases the listener, it increases their sense of well-being. So unless you're doing it every day and you're calling people after work and you're on the phone with them for hours and hours, that might become a burden. But just saying, hey, can I go to lunch with you today because I want to kind of process some things with you, I want to talk about something with you, or I want your opinion, that can be very supportive for you, and it's actually good for the person who's on the receiving end. It allows them to feel like, wow, this person trusts me enough that they want to share, or this person regards my my information, my feedback enough that they want to tell me. So please, if somebody is out there and they're willing to be your listener, take advantage. Just don't take too much advantage where you're doing it overboard. But it's a great way for you and that person to really engage in some self-care and self-compassion.
Well, and Carol, we so years ago, before we had a program, you know, we had no outlet for people to talk to anybody. And once we started this program, one of the facets of it, if you will, was a group session where we brought our mental health professional in and we said to everybody, we're going to go in and we're going to do a group session. And there were people that vocalized their opposition to that. They said, I'll go in there, but I'm not talking. I'm not going to say 2 words. And I don't know why I was surprised by this, but they were the ones that spent more time talking in that session than anybody. And I think when we all came out of there, the one thing that it really did for all of us was said to everybody, hey, we're all in the same boat. We're all going through this. We may never have talked about it before today, but everybody realized that, you know, that there was a reason why we did this. And then after that, people were a little more comfortable, not only in their one-on-one sessions, but also as a group. And you started seeing people focusing more on each other than necessarily themselves as we work through some of these issues. So I agree. You know, we have people here. I have some people that, you know, will come talk to me. And again, I think we talked about this in the last webinar, but I'm working on my listening still. But it helps me, you know, when people come to me and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something that's not necessarily work related, or even if it is, but not investigative in nature, it really has me sit up and focus on, on how I can support them, and in some cases, how they can support me if there's something that I need to talk about. So what does it look like from, we talk about leadership and the benefits of self-compassion. I think it's like anything, right? Especially in our world in terms of internet crimes against children. We want to retain people. We want people that are here for the right reasons to remain here. We spend a lot of time training folks. We spend a lot of money on equipment. We want those people to stick around. We want them to feel like, they're a part of the shared mission. And we want them to feel like we're compassionate as well as leaders. Because in what we do especially, and I suspect it's probably like this for many of you, you're a team concept. You may work individually as an investigator, or as a social worker, or whatever, whatever your discipline is, but you're part of a bigger team. And we get a lot more done as a team than we ever will as individuals. So employee retention is huge. We lost a lot of employees years ago before we had this mental health program in place, before people knew they could just pick up the phone without going through me and talk to a mental health professional. Stress reduction, I don't know anybody that's not dealing with some sort of stress. We're exposed to traumatic situations every day. We're dealing with things like compassion fatigue and burnout. We're trying to be more resilient. But when folks can express their concerns, talk about what they need, that reduces that overall stress, and it makes that environment better to come into. It makes it more manageable in terms of day-to-day, week-to-week, and it just improves that entire environment. And then, physical health. We struggle with physical health, whether it's nutrition, whether it's sleep, whether it's, whatever we're involved in. But one thing that I think increases it better than anything is just this, as we talked about earlier, this happy, healthy environment. At work, at home, think about some things that you can do to improve your happiness at work. What do you have control over versus what you don't have control over? And what you have control over, what can you do to improve your workspace, the people you work with, the day-to-day activities that you're involved in. Because again, I worked for 2 agencies over my 27-year law enforcement career. And ultimately why I left the first one is because I wanted more. I wanted to do more. I was doing a lot of the same stuff. I didn't really see a different light at the end of the road. And so one day I said, hey, I want to move on. I want to try something different. Just because you work for a county or a state or a federal agency where there's a lot of security and a lot of, things that are comfortable, doesn't mean that there's not, greener pastures somewhere else, or there's not a better opportunity for you somewhere else. So I know it's scary at times, but I want to be happy at work. I want to come to a place where it feels more like a hobby or, something fun. And I obviously don't like saying the word fun with ICAC, but you've got to come to and work at a place where, you like the people and you like the mission and you get something out of it more than just a paycheck.
So there's several practices that we can use for self-compassion. Now, we give you several because obviously not all of these are going to fit for every single person. And even if you can pull out only one, that's going to be great. So the first thing we want to talk about is called a self-compassion break. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's, it's taking a break where you can give yourself some compassion. And there's 3 components of self-compassion that are a powerful recipe for regulating difficult emotions. So the first one is mindfulness, staying in the moment. And so a self-compassion break could look like just staying in the moment and thinking about what's going on for you right now and how you're feeling. And so just do a check-in with yourself. Take some time, take 5 minutes and say, check in with your body and how is your body feeling? And then check in with your emotion and think, how are my emotions feeling? Am I feeling calm, cool, collected? Am I feeling nervous, anxious, angry? So, and then allowing yourself to recognize that sometimes things are just really uncomfortable, that we are not expected or required to be happy all the time. We're not expected or required to feel good, to never have any issues. We are humans, and consequently, we have good days, we have bad days, we have times where we might feel a little bit sorry for ourselves. We have times where we can really show up. So having a self-compassion break, part of that is just saying, I'm a human. And as a human, things are going to happen, and I'm going to have particular feelings, and I'm going to allow myself to do that, because trying to stuff that and pretend it didn't happen is certainly not going to make a difference. Soothing touch is another self-compassion exercise. Now, when we're talking about soothing touch, this could be getting a hug from your spouse, your partner, your child, your best friend, somebody that gives great hugs. That's soothing touch. Soothing touch is also going to get a massage. Soothing touch can also be petting your animal, your cat, your dog, your rooster, whatever your pet is. Taking some time to do that soothing touch. That, again, is really good because it brings us back into the moment, and it makes us appreciate and acknowledge the benefits of having touch. So any way that you can get that touch, whether that's through a pet, whether that's through a massage or some other situation like that, or whether it's touch by a loved one, all of those are great ways to get soothing touch that will actually increase your oxytocin and increase your feeling better about yourself and the situation. And it is, again, it's nice way to treat yourself and acknowledge that you're doing a really good job and you're really working in an environment that is not easy. Giving and receiving compassion is another way. So although we need to physically distance ourselves from others, sometimes we don't need to emotionally distance ourselves. So connection feels good, and that means connecting by email, by phone call, by texting, by calling, whatever that might be. So we can stay in compassionate connection with others by breathing in compassion for ourselves and out for others, and then really just staying in touch with others and staying in that connection. And then another way to be compassionate is just being with difficult emotions. So what does that mean? Being with difficult emotions means that when something difficult happens, again, whether it's we're frustrated, angry, sad, whatever that emotion might be, allowing ourselves to feel it. Now, that doesn't mean if we're mad at something, we should just feel mad for days. We actually can say, I'm going to feel I'm really angry right now, or sad, or whatever that emotion is, and I'm going to really sit in that emotion for the next 15 minutes. And I'm just going to kind of wallow in that for 15 minutes because that's what I need right now. And then I'm going to put it to the side, and I'm not going to feel that way. I'm going to put it to a side, and I'm going to focus on something else. So I'm not going to let that emotion take me over, but I'm going to acknowledge that it's there, acknowledge that it's there because something happened that coincides with that emotion, and then let myself feel it before I move on. And then the last on this slide is called Soles of the Feet. So this is really like an anchoring activity. And you, like in this picture, this woman is barefoot, and she's literally putting her feet in the sand. You can do that, but you can even pay attention to what your feet are feeling like in your shoes when you're standing up. So what you can do is you can just feel the ground beneath you and realize that no matter what the issues are, we have this giant world beneath us that can remain solid for us. So we are not, there's always a place where we can find ground that doesn't need to be rocky ground. We can find ground that will be holding us up in a way that sometimes we don't feel like we can do for ourselves.
All great practices. And with regard to that soothing touch, for years, when I was stressed, I would rub my hand across my head like this. And as you can see, I don't have a lot of hair, but um, it was after my mother passed several years ago, and I realized after she passed that as I did that, it was her. Um, she would come into my bedroom when I was younger, when I was little, and when I wasn't feeling well, she would spend time rubbing my head. And I realized all those years later that that was sort of a mechanism for me to feel better. That just that touch, of my head or rubbing my hand across my head, was very soothing in the sense of trying to, help me out of whatever it was that I was dealing with. Um, when we talk about some other practices, how about self-compassion in your daily life? Ask yourself this question: how do I care for myself already? Right? Because, caring for yourself, being self-compassionate, um, is sometimes nicer, better than doing something for others. Okay. Um, my wife and I went through marriage counseling years ago when my kids were young. And one of the things that the counselor told me, she said, you don't spend enough time for yourself. I was the guy who would come home from work and I would play with the kids until they went to bed. I would never say no to anything they wanted to do. I felt like because I spent so much time at work, because there were times where I'd work late into the night or on weekends, that I had to make up for all those hours when I was home spent with my wife and my kids. And it got to a point where, that created some stress and some difficulties. And so it took this counselor to say, you know, go do stuff for you. My wife literally forced me to find hobbies that were, things that I would do by myself. I started kayaking, I started, running, I started hiking. Um, Recently, in the last few years, I started scuba diving. I run some of those Tough Mudder obstacle races. My wife has said she didn't, mud was not included in the marriage vows, that scuba diving was not included in the marriage vows. So it's nice to be able to do things with her and the kids, but now it's nice to be able to go and do things that are, just by myself, because it forces me to leave. It forces me to say, I'm going to go spend time for myself. And I talked to a number of coworkers who have young children who are going through something similar, where they feel guilty when they're going home and they want to go work out or they want to go spend time with the guys. Like I say, you need that. Sooner or later, you're going to get some difficulties. And I want you to understand now that, there needs to be some self-care, some self-reflection, some me time to kind of keep away some of those issues that we see too often. Um, you know, Take a scan of your body as well. All right. If you've got a vehicle, it's got a check engine light, right? Your body doesn't have that check engine light, but you know better than anybody when something doesn't feel right. As we get older, we start to feel things differently in our body, but take time every day just to sort of go through physical symptoms, how you're feeling, physically, emotionally, mentally. Is it time to go get a checkup? Is it time to talk to someone? Having this mental health program reminds us of the need to talk to people. Just like having a doctor and a dentist reminds us every 6 months, hey, time to go get your teeth cleaned. Time to come in for your physical or your annual checkup, right? Same thing with regards to your emotional and your mental health. Uh, think about your core values, right? I mean, we've grown up, we've had morals, values instilled in us our entire lives. Um, you know, it feels good to be able to uphold them. It feels good to be able to say, I have ethics and values and morals that, I'm going to live by. And no matter what happens, I'm going to, stick to them and just, use them, throughout my daily life or my day to day. And then, gratitude. I talk about gratitude a lot with people. We're a profession that obviously likes to complain and criticize at times, and we're not always grateful for what we have right in front of us. So I have a sign in my office that says, what if today we were just grateful for everything? Just as that reminder that despite all of the issues that we're dealing with and all the struggles that we're going through, there are a lot of things in life that, that we can be grateful for, because it really is something that cultivates that joy. Because I think it's too easy for us to overlook some of the small things that, bring us that joy and allow us to feel grateful.
So some other things that you might want to do. One of the things that I always think about is managing my self-criticizer. It's easy for me to not feel like I'm doing as well as I could be, to hold myself to a very, very high standard, and then criticize myself when I am not doing that. Or staying self-attuned and noting. So it's being attuned with myself and saying, am I pushing myself too hard? Am I pushing myself enough? Am I taking care of the things I need to, or am I so overwhelmed that I'm sitting and stuck in inertia? And then noting those things. And then if there's things that need to be adjusted, I can adjust those. Meditation is something that I do on a daily basis. I've done it for so many years. I don't know what life would be without meditation, because it's just part of my life, and it's a habit, and it's what I do. But it's a very special time for me that I do by myself, for myself, with nobody else around. Now, not that you couldn't meditate with somebody else, but for me, it's a very private time. My dogs often sit with me, so I guess it's not that private, but it's good until they try to sit in my lap. So I think that that's another way to really center yourself, to get in touch with how you're feeling, and then also just have that time that's sacred to you, to use as you will. And then journaling. I personally am not a big journaler, but I know that many people are, and they see great benefit in that. I think my lack of journaling stems back to having younger brothers when I was young, and I would write in a diary, and then they would always try to find the diary to read what I wrote. So it's like that trauma trigger about journaling seems like another extension of writing in a diary. So for me, it doesn't work. But there's so many people that can learn from writing things down and then reflecting, and then when they read those words back, they can gain perspective that they didn't have. And then another way to practice self-compassion. This is the simple steps you can take when you're not, when you're kind of getting stuck. So the first thing, for instance, maybe if I showed up late. Maybe I thought that this webinar was starting at on the half hour, and it was actually starting on the hour. And so instead of showing up on time, Basilia is madly texting me, Carol, where are you? How come you're not here? We're starting in 2 minutes. And then the rest of the day, I'm beating myself up. I'm saying, it doesn't matter that you had other things happening. It doesn't matter that you had a client in crisis that you were talking to. You should have known better. You should have done better. You should have whatever. Well, the first thing, if I'm going to practice self-compassion, the first thing I want to do is take myself out of the equation and put somebody else in. So if I want to take myself out of the equation, I can put Dave in the equation, and I say, well, if Dave was in this circumstance where he had a case that he was working on and an emergency came up, and then he got confused about the time, I know Dave well enough to know that that's not his nature. Dave is not the kind of person that's just going to show up a half hour late. And it must have been really important to Dave that he would have showed up late. And then when I think about that, I think, okay, so if Dave is allowed to make a mistake, and he's a very stand-up guy, he's an honorable guy, I can trust him, I know he's going to do right, then maybe I need to allow myself that space. So I'm going to replace myself with Dave. I'm going to think about what I would say to Dave, and I would not say to Dave, wow, Dave, you're a big loser. You showed up late or you forgot. I would say, Dave, you know what? It happens to all of us. There's days when we all get confused about the times because our lives are so busy, and particularly when we're doing webinars on 3 different time zones, because Basilia's on one time zone, I'm on one, Dave's on another. All of these things are understandable. And then I'm going to encourage him, and I'm going to say, Dave, you know what? This is a one-time thing, I'm sure. In the future, if you would like me to send you a quick text saying, hey, we're on in 15 minutes. I'll be happy to do that. And then I'm going to return. I'm going to return to myself, and I'm going to think, wow, I can show a lot of compassion to Dave if Dave had made a mistake. Why can't I do that to myself? And I'm not going to allow myself to say, yes, but Dave is working on cases and I'm not, or yes, but Dave, whatever. I'm not going to do that. That's not useful. And then I'm going to act, and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to treat myself as well as I would Dave. And so consequently, I'm going to give myself some space and some grace, and I'm going to cut myself some slack. That's how you practice self-compassion. So what are the benefits of that? You know, there's a greater opportunity for resilience. So if I allow myself to just be human and make mistakes and I can treat myself well, then there's a greater opportunity for me to bounce back when something happens, because I know that I'm only human, and if something happens, it happens, and I can get through that. And then I can have more increased satisfaction at work. I can enjoy my work because I'm not feeling so bad about ever not knowing everything all the time, or ever making a mistake, or ever not getting things 100% right. So that's going to be another benefit. And Dave, did you want to talk about the last two?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've gotten better over the years about this idea of work life, or, you know, work personal life balance. I'm not of the opinion that work-life balance means that, you know, the minute work ends, you don't think about it until the next day. And same thing with your personal life, that you never think about it at work. I don't think that's feasible. But I think there are ways that we can, you know, manage the two together. I think there are ways that the two can work together. Because unfortunately in our line of work, I can't keep work at work. The internet never shuts off. As the statewide commander, we have people that are working 24/7 throughout the state to protect children. So, you know, I've started to figure out little ways that will help me when I'm not at work, you know, manage it a little better. And you know, one of those ways is just like when I go on vacation. I allocate 5 minutes of every day on vacation to just do a few emails here and there. And it works wonders. I know that sounds counterproductive to what I just said about going on vacation, but if I come back from a week vacation and I have 1,000 emails, I'm going to be a very difficult person for the better part of 3 or 4 days coming back, as opposed to if I say at the end of each night on vacation, hey, I'm going to get rid of 25 emails in 5 minutes that I don't need to worry about, that I can answer in 5 seconds. That does wonders. And my wife used to scoff at me for it until one day she started working. We went on our first vacation and she started trying it, and she's like, this is the best thing ever. She goes, because I come back from vacation on Monday and instead of 1,000 emails, I've got 200. And that does something for her. So, you know, I dream of the day, and I joke about this all the time. I'm going to go work for Home Depot as the guy that mixes paint, because that guy doesn't think about mixing paint when he's at home, right? When his shift ends, he's done. And that's not a reality for most of us who have to deal with, you know, crimes against children or social work or our respective jobs, where we're thinking about it long past the time that we clock out at the end of each day. So, you know, it has decreased my burnout. It has, you know, all of these things that we've talked about has helped me manage and process some of the more traumatic side of this job. And, you know, we've kept more employees around. I see employees who are more resilient, who are happier, who understand that, you know, they have an outlet for some of the things that they're going through. So, and that has made us a better team. It's made us more effective. It's better dialed us in, and you know, we see a lot more successes than we do, you know, failures in terms of the mental health and wellness of our folks. So we want you to think a little bit about your own self-care, and you know, we talked a little bit about journaling, we talked a little bit about meditation, but you know, again, what are you doing day to day? I want you to think about your typical day. And I want you to take some time, after this webinar to really think about, your goals, what you could do in the next week, what that looks like a month from now. We talked about practicing this. Maybe you don't have a routine right now in the morning. Maybe you don't have a routine when it comes to, your sleep hygiene or, drinking water, your health, your nutrition, exercise. Okay. Start small, right? I cannot work out to save my life. My wife is, she's dialed in. She works out every day, like clockwork. If she misses a workout, it's the end of the world. And she asked if I want to work out, and I say, no, I'm just going to sit on the couch. And so that's not part of my action plan. But, I say to myself, what can I do to start small? Can I start walking? Can I go outside? Can I do some things that are exercise minded, but are not traditional exercises? You're doing yard work, playing basketball with my son. Those things bring me joy. Exercising does not bring me joy. But obviously, if you're not going to exercise, you've got to take better care of yourself in the nutrition department. You've got to drink more water. You've got to, your sleep hygiene needs to be better. You have to work at all those things, right? We can all say that we want to sleep for 8 hours a day, but that's not a reality unless we really work at it, unless we put our devices away earlier and we keep them out of the bedroom. And so go through your daily routine, go through your morning, your, drive to work, your lunchtime, your drive home, the time you spend, when you're at home, and then the time you spend getting ready to sleep and while you're sleeping, right? Those things should all go into this self-care action plan. And sometimes writing them out is what you need to do. Something you can look at, something your significant other can look at, and then help hold you accountable for the things that you said you're going to do. Okay. And that's where we talk about, starting small and then, setting some goals that you can use to, get you where you need to be. We put in the chat there a link to just a little action plan that, you can use to actually just chart out, the next 7 days, right? Just for the fun of it, see what it looks like, what you could do in the next week, right? And I'm not saying that you need to be, deciding that you're going to run a marathon by day 7, or you're going to be going to bed every day at 8 p.m. and you're going to sleep till, 6 a.m. But there are certainly some things that you can do to start small that will keep you on the right track and keep you or help you establish that routine to get those action plans actually to come to fruition.
And one of the things that I wanted to say about action plans is that when, the way to think about this, at least for me, is when I think about what do I need for self-compassion or self-care, I know that not every single time I need self-care is it going to be the exact same self-care. So maybe if I've had a bad day, what really is going to make me feel better is a big old banana split. But maybe if I've got lots of sad emotions, my self-care on that day would be a hug from a friend. So there are people who create books, or they create spreadsheets that talk about different action plans for different emotions or different situations. So like I said, maybe on one occasion I will need one self-care, a different occasion I will need something else. And if you have it all written out, when you're in the moment of that feeling, you don't have to think about what do I need now. You can go to that spreadsheet and say, oh yeah, when I'm feeling sad, I wrote down that these are the things that make me feel better. Or when I'm feeling mad, or when I'm feeling lost, or when I'm feeling lonely. And so you can have all those self-care in place without having to worry about coming up with a new idea each time that you're experiencing an emotion. So what are some new tools you will add to your self-care action plan? And you might have some that you're already doing that we haven't talked about, and feel free to add those as well. if there's something that you've got that's really working well, we would love to hear about it. Having a list of go-tos I can reference, yeah, it's great. That works for me, because when I'm in the moment, I'm not really thinking clearly, and then my go-to is something that might not be so healthy. Having more consistent, yes, that's huge for me. That's huge for me, having a consistent bedtime. More exercise, yeah. I know more exercise is something that's always on the top of the list. Even if you don't want to do it, it's something that's really useful. Focus on self-care during the workday, yes. And so you could do little things throughout the whole entire day. You don't have to do one big thing. You can do small things. An hour a week to have with coworkers and not work, great. That way, if I miss it, someone else in the office will pick it up. I think that's great. That's a great plan to add some self-care
Yeah, I
into
mean,
the calendar.
we calendar everything else, so why not calendar, 15, 30 minutes a day, to spend on wellness. I'm in our wellness room right now. We have a wellness room in the office where, the sign on the door basically says, hey, come in here for 15 minutes. No work, just come in. There's, a number of things in here that allow people to, just reset themselves and then go on about their day. So hopefully when they walk by the room, it's that reminder of, hey, I need that time.
Yes. Anybody else?
Great, all
Okay.
great answers there. And look, just because you have all these tools and you've learned some new skills here, doesn't mean that, setbacks will not happen. I think we would all like that, we get from point A to point B, or we get to the finish line, and we have no hurdles or no setbacks. But I'm sure that all of you have a day or a life like you see there that's the reality. And while that comes with its set of hurdles and difficulties, there are times where being down in that hole, having to climb out of that or climb that mountain, has brought with it some satisfaction. Now that's easier when we have these tools. When I'm down there with that guy on the little boat and I'm in the water feeling like I'm drowning, I don't feel like I'm drowning as much, because that's when I remember the things that I can do, and the things that I've learned to help me get out of there a little easier than before, where I may have felt like there's just no possible way that we're gonna, get up this hill or get out of this hole or overcome some of these hurdles. So, it's important to be reminded of the things that you can use to, be more compassionate or to take care of yourself, or, the little tools that you have that, help increase your mental health and wellness.
So here are some quotes on resilience that we like. So, do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again. And that's what resilience, in my mind, that's what it's all about. It's about the increasing the strength of the muscle to get back up. So if we never fall down, how strong is our get back up muscle? Not very strong. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. So yes, certainly in our lives, there's going to be setbacks. Certainly there's going to be times when things don't go like we'd like, but we don't have to be defined by that. We can be impacted by it, and it becomes one more part of us, but it doesn't need to be the defining aspect of our personality. And then out of the massive suffering emerge the strongest souls. The most massive character are seared with scars. So again, that's why they're seared with scars, and they're the massive character, because they've been through so much and they've come out the other side. You know that expression, if anything that doesn't kill you will make you stronger, that's kind of like what resilience is. So if you have the ability to get through those things, then yes, absolutely, you will get stronger.
And I'm reminded every time, as we work in the space with children and child exploitation offenders, You know, we're stronger because of what we have gone through every single day. And I'm reminded of that every time we have to present these cases to a jury that has never seen the child exploitation material, a jury that has never heard from child exploitation offenders. And that's where you start to see how impactful this material and this line of work really is on the everyday person. And I think that reminds me of why, you know, that this has made us resilient, and it's made us or provided us with some skills, as odd as that sounds, to overcome a lot of this trauma and a lot of the burnout and stress and the fatigue to better ourselves and continue to be better. And so, you know, just into review, we've talked today about, you know, how to become an effective leader. And as I said earlier, that's constant practice. It's taking some of the things from today. I think it's taking a little bit of everything from life and, you know, using what works, right? A number of different things that can be effective. We discussed the importance of wellness for success while in the leadership role. We've learned about the importance of self-compassion for success as well. And we talked a little bit about the steps needed to create an effective and resilient team. So.
Thanks so much, Carol and Dave. I feel like every time we do one of these, I learn something new, even though we've done so many. I'm just going to leave our contact info up here for anyone who needs it. We are going to take a couple of questions. We did get quite a few in the pre-registration. So I'm just going to start with the first one. Do you have any suggestions for dealing with toxic peers and organizational stress in addition to the stress of the job?
Dave, you want to start or do you want me to start?
You know, I think for me, organizational stress oftentimes comes in when we're dealing with people in the organization that maybe don't understand what's causing us the stress, what's making the job so difficult. I mean, I have said for years that it's not the material that traumatizes me. It's not the offenders that we're dealing with. It's the administration sometimes. It's people who, you know, don't understand the mission, who don't, you know, provide us the tools that we need, who hamper us at every turn. And what it really took was just an educational process. We brought in people. We said, hey, you need to understand what we're doing, okay? You think it's one way, but it's really another way. So, you know, that piece was fairly easy to overcome. The toxic peers, you know, I think there are a lot of people that come in and they have different expectations, or they, you know, act differently than the next person. So I think it's really about, you know, again, understanding everybody, sitting people down, you know, maybe managing expectations, understanding, you know, why someone is the way they are. A lot of times the toxic people in the office have been toxic because of something in their personal lives, something that has nothing to do with the organization or the workday. And so once we started this process of talking about mental health and wellness, exposing some of the cracks, if you will, in the personal lives, we started to see that toxicity go away, and people started to understand and have more compassion for each other.
I don't see any additional questions on the chat, so I'm just going to pull some more from the pre-registration, unless there's any that you would like to focus on, Carol or Dave.
No, if there's some that you think are applicable, or if anybody in the audience has a question, we would love to answer that. But if not, no, Basilia, feel free to pull a question from the pre.
So there was a question about individual wellness assessment tools for supervisory staff. Do you have any suggestions on resources?
Yeah, the assessment tool that I would recommend is always going to be the ProQual. It's the Professional Quality of Life Assessment, and it's a self-assessment, and the scoring gets a little bit tricky, but you can figure it out. It explains how you do it, and it will assess for burnout, for what they call secondary trauma, and then for compassion fatigue. So secondary trauma is what we call vicarious trauma, And it's something that I recommend people do every 6 months if you're in the helping, supporting field, because it gives you the answers that will say, wow, you know, my scores are, I'm really at the burnout level, or I'm really feeling like I've had a lot of compassion fatigue. And so it gives you that immediate answer. It's not something that you have to send away to get the results. It's something that you can take it off of the ProQual website. It's PROQUOL, and there's the whole website on it. It talks all about the ProQual and what it's used for and how you can score it, and it's free, so it's a great tool to use.
Cecilia, there's a question that says, how do I help my team to prioritize their wellness? I think it starts with you as a supervisor. You know, if you're in an agency that has agreed that there needs to be some wellness, or maybe you have a mental health component already, the easiest way to do that is just to take the reins and say, we're going to do this. You know, we have a wellness committee. I've said to them, hey, once a month, I want you to plan something. You know, once a month, that's going to take priority. And it may only be 2 or 3 hours out of one day of the month. Or I may say, hey, we're going to do this activity tomorrow. Everyone's going to be here. It's mandatory. You're still going to be on the clock for it. But when we, call attention to that, when we schedule it, we talked earlier about putting stuff on a calendar, right? We live and die by calendars in our office, scheduling operations, scheduling court time. We should be scheduling wellness activities, and that's exactly what we do. We put it on a whiteboard. People know that this is coming up. They may not exactly know what it is, but we've essentially then prioritized it.
Yeah, and there were quite a few questions about sort of 60-second self-care and burnout and compassion fatigue. And I just want to mention that you can always access our resource room. So if you go to our website, you can request access, and there's plenty of resources there. You can have access to small videos, and we have past presentations and webinars that we've done on there as well. And you can always access OJJDP's website for any previous webinars that we've done in the past. So for example, we recently did one on moral injury that I think would be really useful to some of those questions about, burnout and compassion fatigue.
And certainly you could reach out to any of us. Our emails are here for a reason. So if you feel like you've got a question that's directed at one of us, feel free to just email.
So with that, I'm just going to keep moving along. So we have part 3 coming up. So please feel free to join us on June 6th. And then part 4, we will have on July 18th. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Eileen.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. This is our contact information. If you have any question about the webinar or need any of the materials, like I said, the presentation will be sent out shortly. I'm also asking everyone to please fill out our feedback evaluation. I just put the link in the chat. It's very helpful for us to get feedback on our webinars and always trying to improve. There's also some links to OJJDP resources. And this is our TTA 360 portal where you can request training and technical assistance, including from SHIFT. More links to where the video will be posted. And I just want to say thanks everyone for joining us today. And I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.